Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff. Folks, this case took a major turn. Good afternoon. Welcome to Police Off the Cuff. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon. Today, we're talking about brand new critical information in the kidnapping of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. And for the first time, investigators have released video of a person of interest seen near her home at the time she vanished. This is no longer just a missing person case. This is a violent felony investigation with electronic evidence, surveillance footage, and a clock that is still ticking. So today we're going to break down what we see in the video, what it tells investigators, what it doesn't tell, and where the enforcement goes next. And let's get into it. The person of interest video, which they had a little problem calling that a person of interest or a suspect, but I would submit to you, when someone comes to your door with a mask on and a gun between his legs, I think he's at least a person of interest, and I would say at least a suspect in this, right? The individual also tries to hide his identity. That may say to many people, oh, he didn't plan this too well. But what I always push with our police experience here is that criminals aren't always that smart. Many of you folks out there in TV land and true crime land think they are. And they're usually not that smart. So his face was partially covered. Body language, he's cautious, appears aware of the camera. Not just aware, he knows there's a camera. He's not wandering. He's not confused. A direct approach and an exit, right? And he's tampering with the camera. So we're going to look at all of those things. And a quick reminder, if you're looking for real crime insight, not YouTube theories, this channel is different. I'm a retired NYPD Sergeant. And on Police Off the Cuff, we analyze cases the way prosecutors do and what matters, what doesn't, and what the internet gets wrong. If that's the perspective you want, subscribe now, because this isn't entertainment, it's experience. And I would like to remind everyone that the Police Off the Cuff podcast is sponsored by FanDuel on the Believe Network. So, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your thoughts, hold on to your prayers. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the Police Off the Cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Joining me today, and you may ask, what do these guys do for a living that they're always available, even during the daytime? But joining me today is retired NYPD detective and straight out of Brooklyn, Phil Grimaldi. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you for having me, Billy.
Always a pleasure. And also, he actually does have a job. Retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney of law. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Bill. Good afternoon. Good to see you, Phil.
Same
You
here.
know, I thought last night when I went to bed and they had a person of interest, I was like, that's all she wrote. This is going to unfold, and this whole candle of wax is just going to melt, and they're going to have the whole case figured out. And that didn't happen. So they did have a person of interest. They did actually hit a house with minus a warrant, using the emergency exception. And none of those things at this point have panned out. But I believe with all my heart and all my experience, all my soul, that the FBI is on the right track, and they are just digging in, and they're going forward with this. Phil, your thoughts?
Yes. Like you, Bill, last night when I went to bed, and I stayed plugged in on cable news till after 2:00 in the morning, hoping for some type of a recovery of Nancy Guthrie, or perhaps taking a perpetrator and actually charging him. But unfortunately, when we woke up this morning, we saw that person that they had detained was the word they were using, was released, and they feel that this person is not responsible for the abduction of Nancy Guthrie, or maybe not even involved in this at any level at all. Now, with that said, that recent video that we have, that opens so many different questions and so many different investigatory leads that I'm sure are being followed up. There's a lot of conjecture. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that are floating around between social media, the internet, cable news, talking heads. And I believe in what I've said before: keep it simple, stupid. Let's stay in the lane of where this evidence is taking us. We have a new area that we could look into with regard to that video, all of the clothing that that person is wearing, perhaps identifying some of it. When were these things purchased from in the area where we believe this abduction took place? And investigators can do some gumshoe work and track down that information, perhaps taking us right to the perpetrator.
Phil, good point. In the Koberger case, it was uncovered that he had ordered a K-bar knife via Amazon. So all of those things, all of those tools, all of those investigative steps are no doubt being undertaken by the FBI and, of course, the Pima County Police at this point. Mike, your thoughts here? We've been covering this since January 31st. Things are changing, but this is a long time for this investigation to go on, and we're all concerned, of course, with Nancy Guthrie. And the big question is, and not to say this lightly, but is she still alive? And I don't want to conjecture on that. I think we're all praying that she is. But Mike, your thoughts up until this point.
Yeah, with no proof of life, it makes it really difficult to believe that she is still in a good place and is healthy. And I believe that using the emergency exception to the search warrant and taking down a door was the absolute proper thing to do. The FBI is working hard. With the Pima County Sheriff and the FBI is using every single resource. Nobody should worry about that to track these guys down. And, if you get a lead, you got to act as it's an emergency, because time is absolutely of the essence, considering Nancy's 84 years old and not in good health. And we saw the video, and you guys analyzed that yesterday evening, and you were noticing a lot of, things about the clothing and the build and things like that. The police are on the right track. This is not really the biggest setback at all. They detained him. They cleared him. That's good. And therefore, they've got to keep on going. But at this point, the ridiculous rumors that have been spread by politicians and stuff wanting, Nancy to die, it's just bizarre. People should not listen to that sort of stuff. This, as Phil said, this is not some sort of worldwide conspiracy. It's a keep it simple, stupid kind of thing. Let's figure out what is the most probably realistic thing that was driving this, and we'll go with it. And I think they're doing a good job right now.
I think you're right. I want to play the video, and then there's a statement by Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, after you watch this.
Doorbell camera. Kash Patel explaining how the FBI worked with private partners to get that footage. Listen.
We were able to execute lawful searches and go to these private sector companies and expedite results, and then go into their systems and actually excavate material that people would think would normally be deleted and no one would look for. That's how the FBI worked with our private sector partners to pull out material that people thought didn't even exist because of the specific type of subscription service on the Ring doorbell. But thanks to this brilliant partnership, we were able to get it out, sharpen it with our technical capabilities at the FBI, and put it out to the world.
Former White House Chief Information Officer Teresa Payton joins us now. Teresa, good morning to you. Yeah, I said it earlier in the show that the people who were able to accomplish this.
Well, we'll get to Teresa in a minute, but that is absolutely amazing, because what it shows is the FBI now is working in conjunction with Google, YouTube, all of these digital companies who are fully cooperating. They don't always, cooperate with law enforcement, right? And they are in this time, and we're finding things out that the FBI has the capability to do that many people never knew, and that's on purpose, because they don't want to give away all their secrets. Because now the next time you get something like this, countermeasures that perpetrators and criminals take, they'll think of these countermeasures to defeat the capabilities of the FBI. So let me get back to this White House expert here.
Should be very proud of the work that they've done. It's truly remarkable to learn more about how these images were thought to be lost, and it took about 7 days for them to achieve the goal of getting this very clear footage that we see on our screens right now. So tell us a little bit more about what goes into acquiring the security footage.
Yeah, Carly, you're right about this. I mean, this is 8 days of intense grit and teamwork to pull something like this off. So the way this works in an investigation, first of all, delete doesn't ever really truly mean delete. And what these teams likely did is looked at the time frame that they believe she went missing, and then they probably pulled every single source of backup tape, any memory that might still be resident, and then started to do a painstaking forensic process to look for, because basically the way they explain it is in the back end, they are wiping over files for people that don't do subscription services. So that may mean that full on videos and full on photos aren't available, but there are some available in the fragments that haven't been written over yet. And so this is just incredible work. The other thing that dawns on me as well is by saying publicly, we don't have video, the cameras were damaged, that could have actually been a ploy by law enforcement to have the person who did this relax a little bit and sort of let their guard down and maybe be leaving other clues in the process.
That is a real interesting take. Yeah. Really interesting stuff. Okay, so you just answered the question how they got the video. Now the question becomes, what do they do with the video and how do they do that? How important do you think AI will be in terms of breaking down all those little details that, quite frankly, the human eye cannot necessarily process in terms of finding who this person is?
Yeah, you're asking a great question, Todd. And so a couple of things that I did on my own last night, just to kind of think about this conversation this morning, is I'm assuming that some of the best trained investigators in our country are on this project using AI to enhance what they would normally take them a longer time to do. So here's an example. If you have multiple people of interest that you're interviewing and talking to, which they may have, and they're just not telling the public, again, you want the abductors to let their guard down so you can find Nancy. They can start using AI to match up the eyes. So we have the eyes, the eyebrows, that you could use AI to ask questions about what are the probabilities that these faces actually could be a good match. What are the probabilities that this person is wearing layers of clothing and they're not this bulky? What are the probabilities that they're taller than they seem to be, and what do they weigh? So there's a lot of things that AI can be doing to aid this investigation, including doing reverse image lookups of the backpack, of the clothing being worn, of the boots themselves. Maybe those things have been spotted on other surveillance videos, so they can use it to sort through and look through matches through massive amounts of data. And then the last thing that I thought about when I saw the person actually walk to the garden, grab some leaves and go to the camera with it is using AI to ask the probability of trace residual DNA that might be on those gloves and those boots from the abductor putting those clothes on. Maybe in the garden, there's some trace DNA that could be available to aid in the investigation.
Teresa, very interesting that you bring up the eyes, because, when you go to the airport, if you use Clear, they ask you to look into a camera, and then I guess they're scanning your retina. It certainly has to do with your eyes, and then they can identify who you are, who your license is, and if you've been cleared to go on an airplane. Can that sort of technology be used in an image like this? Certainly more grainy than looking directly into a camera. And you do have the reflection, the flash covering a large portion of his eyes, but can that be wiped away so they do get a clear indication of who this person is by looking at the eyes alone?
You're spot on there. So you can use AI editing to enhance the photo. Now, here's the thing, with some of the editing, you could end up with a photo that doesn't look like the person. So what they're probably going to be doing is, again, sort of taking other surveillance footage. We know they pulled footage from a Circle K and looking for matches. But you can actually digitally enhance these photos and say, what might this look like had we had better lighting, had we have less of a grainy image, and then start to actually match it with people you've interviewed, people that have been picked up on other surveillance footage.
Teresa Payton, former
Amazing. Actually, you know, something I knew years ago about something called iris scan,
Yeah.
where it's one of the highest levels. They use it in security of identifying someone, even more than DNA. It was actually has more, you know, how when DNA, they'll say it's 72 trillion billion to
Right.
one. That's the person. Iris scan is even more accurate. So if they can pull his iris up from these photos using AI, I'm sold. I'm in. I'll invest all my money in artificial intelligence. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, you know, the circle is closing. They've got this technology. And as she said, law enforcement may have, you know, by their silence, spoke volumes about what they really have. And sometimes we think that, oh, nothing is said publicly by a police department or by the FBI. They're in the dark. They don't know. But in this case, there's probably a lot of other material that they can look at for comparison and say, and, you know, behind the scenes, the investigation is much farther along than we would think. And I at this point, I think that's a good bet. And you're right. AI is amazing what it can do. You know, just remove all of the other things so that you can filter down to the essence of what this person actually looks like is brilliant.
You know, Mike, not to rain on this parade, but there are people, politicians out there that rail against facial recognition technology, that rail against ShotSpotter, that rail against investigative geographic crime analysis.
Right.
These are the people that you vote for. And in these cases, we all want to say, wow, they get the best technology, facial recognition, iris scan, all the things we're talking about. And politicians rail against some of this stuff. You have idiots in many cities that are against facial recognition. Phil.
Yeah, Billy, I think you're going into the ACLU territory of politics. And obviously, everyone has rights. We don't want to overstep bounds with regard to surveillance and things of that nature. However, in this case, the fact that that camera was still running and sending images to a server somewhere was key to recovering this video. Now, as it was stated, there was no active account, so it wasn't able to recover real quickly. Now, I have a Ring camera on my house. I do have the account. This is a Nest camera. It probably works similarly. At times, I will get notification when someone comes by the door, but even if a vehicle drives by, let's say a school bus, a delivery truck, an Amazon, the camera will go off. Now, I know that from the little bit of research that I did on these cameras, there are things that will register to the camera movement, but it doesn't send an alert. I think that's what's happening here. Because it's so dark, perhaps it didn't send an alert, or she doesn't have the account active and it just went into the server. Thank God it was there. And I don't think that in a situation like that, you purchased this camera, you put it on your home, you decided not to have the account. That information being stored somewhere on a server, to me, is not a violation of your rights. That's my opinion, because you took this camera into your possession. It's not like this is, a camera that's just going around and taking video of everything. So I think that with regard to the politicians that want to knock stuff like this, well, hooey on them. This is a very high-profile case. This is a matter of life and death for this woman, and thank God that working with Google, they were able to recover this information.
In the chat, and again, this is someone that agrees with the less surveillance. At Lizzie437, I hate that people are okay with all the surveillance stuff. If this meant to normalize this technology, it is not amazing. Well, Lizzie, on my house, I'm going to have a Ring camera. And if I want to build a moat that's 12 feet deep with alligators in it and fill it up with water, it's my house. And I'm going to do that. And yes, public places all over this country, there are video cameras everywhere. Every major city has them all. And to go even further, license plate readers. License plate readers just don't take a picture of licenses. They go one step further. They run the license and see if there's an alert on this license, if this person owes summonses, if this person is a wanted person, if this car is wanted, if the person is a terrorist. So We are here. It is 2026. That is where we are because we live in a world that is not safe. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, look, I love my privacy and I guard my privacy jealously like everyone else. And that's an important thing because your personal privacy is the cornerstone of individual liberty. However, when it comes to crime, violent crime, you need things like facial recognition, and you see all the traffic cameras and things like that. That's for multi-purposes. It's for car accidents, traffic control. It's for parade control. Look at the Boston bomber, marathon bombing here. So therefore, and look at ShotSpotter. The mayor of Chicago got rid of the contract for ShotSpotter. Why on earth would you do that? It was a fantastic technology that allowed the police to, within like 50 feet, figure out where a shot was fired, at a victim. So rather than having to wait for a 911 call and that might never come, you got that information right away, quicker response time. That's a good thing. However, when people put things like this on their house, like me, like Phil, like you, that is an indication that we just want to be extra careful because everything that we love and we cherish in our life is in that home and we want to have it. So I'm as, I don't like certain things that surveillance, like your purchase histories and your political views. I don't want people to surveil that. But when it comes to personal safety, I'm all for it.
100%.
Billy, if you're a law-abiding citizen and all of this technology is there for surveillance and you're not committing any criminal acts, you really have nothing to worry about. So to me, the only people that are really concerned are somebody that's trying to hide something, in my opinion.
Looking at this person of interest, this suspect, I will say he's a suspect because anyone that walks up to someone's door with a mask on, gloves on, and a firearm between their legs, and I've never saw a holster worn like that before, he's not collecting for the Red Cross, as I said yesterday. He's there. He has intent. He's there to commit a crime. All right. And the camera took a photo. So, but old-fashioned gumshoe work right now. We're going to look at his clothing. We're going to look at, is there a brand name? There apparently is an emblem on the backpack. And those traceable things, law enforcement will go out and try to find out what stores sell them. Or today, everyone buys things online. Check Amazon, who in this area bought these items. There's a backpack, for example, that has that emblem on it. I'm sure they already know who makes that backpack. So it's old-fashioned gumshoe work. But one of the things that has been brought up is this guy, this person you see in the video, is he one of the kidnappers or is he an opportunist that is just going to commit a crime, a home invasion? Those are some of the questions I have. And I don't think we or anyone else really knows the answer to that right now. Phil.
Yeah, that video shows me an individual that appears to be a male. Now, in the chat, I see there's some people talking about it looks like a female. You can actually see, if you put that video back up, Phil, I'm sorry, Bill, the still, you could see that person has facial hair. It looks like a mustache. To me, it looks like a white or Hispanic male. I think there's no question about that. There's numerous videos that do show some type of facial hair or images, I should say. So with that said, we know we narrowed it down, male, possibly white or Hispanic. So that narrows it down a little bit. I think that the FBI's technology is going to be able to tell us height, weight, and maybe even approximate age. And some of the things that video that you played with that technology person talking about the things that AI can do, colorization, because those colors are not, they're very gray and white. I think that if you have the color of the ski mask, the color of the jacket, the color of the gloves, the color of the pants, the color of the sneakers, that right there might spark someone's attention that knows this individual and say, hey, that looks like whoever. So I think that that's going to be important. And I'm almost certain, I can't say 100%, I'd say about 99% that they can do a colorization. And the reason I say that is they have black and white films from the 20s and 30s that they've colorized. So I think even the Wizard of Oz, to talk about a movie that was colorized. So with technology like that, put out a colorized photo, even if you have to dump it into AI and come up with something close to it. That might spark the interest of people that know this person. Let's face it, this person is not unique to friends, relatives, people around them, surroundings. Perhaps he goes into a store every day to buy his coffee, and someone in that store, that 7-Eleven, can pick up on that. And again, I talk about the reward. We know that money's going to open doors and lead to a lot of tips. I implore the family to invest, put up a reward. And by the way, the parameters of collecting that reward can be put by the family to say, not about arrest and conviction. They could say information leading to the recovery of Nancy Guthrie. And that alone can be where the reward will be paid. I think that that's going to be very, very important, because there's people out there that are holding back information, perhaps of fear or not wanting to get involved. And I think that it's very, very telling that if you put up a big reward, you can get the wheels turning. And again, the reward parameters can be set by the family, not by the FBI.
You know, you're so right, Phil. But, you know, some of the people in the chat are, we're just presenting this out there to show how technology can really help to solve crime. And there's a whole other issues. We're not here to get political, but I don't know if you missed the introduction of the show. We say, if you like true crime from a police perspective, that's what we are. All three of us are police, or former police. I'm a retired NYPD homicide sergeant. Phil's a retired NYPD detective, and Mike is a retired NYPD sergeant, a professor and an attorney at law. So I'm sorry if you maybe missed the introduction. Schmitty, thank you so much for the $5 super sticker, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Sorry about your loss.
93 years old. So I want to play this, and again, there's all kinds of stuff still going on, and TMZ came up with another note. It's not a ransom note. It sort of is a little bit of extraneous noise, but there's so many things coming up with this investigation. Let me play this with TMZ involved.
Wednesday morning, day 11 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. My next guest says he and his team has finally seen activity in a Bitcoin account tied to possibly a ransom note sent to news outlets in Arizona. TMZ founder Harvey Levin's with me now. And Harvey, good morning to you. Terrific work from the very beginning on this. Your outlet received an original letter. You did not receive a second letter where another affiliate did. So by my count, that's 2 letters. And you now report that TMZ has just been sent a third letter. Please explain and describe what you got about 90 minutes ago.
So an hour and a half ago, we got kind of a bizarre letter, an email from somebody who says they know who the kidnapper is, and that they have tried reaching Savannah's sister, Annie, and Savannah's brother to no avail. And they said they want 1 Bitcoin sent to a Bitcoin address that we have confirmed is active. It's a real Bitcoin address. As they put it, time is more than relevant. So we have no idea whether this is real or not, but they are making a demand. It's interesting that, you know, Bitcoins fluctuate in value, but it's around $56,000 now, 1 Bitcoin, which is about the amount that the authorities are offering for information leading to the return of Nancy. So I don't know if that aligns, but whoever sent this, and they actually give a name and an email address, but whoever sent this is asking for around that amount via Bitcoin for information that they say leads directly to the person.
Let's. All right, you know, Harvey, you're irrelevant. You're trying to stay relevant. That's bogus. The guy gave his real name. He gave a real email address. Send the FBI over to the guy. They can just track him through his email. Get off the screen. This is just extraneous noise. He wants to be part of the investigation. He's not. It just sort of muddies the waters, if you could use that term. And he's trying to stay at the precipice of this investigation. He has nothing to do with it, you know. So again, he gives a real email address, a real name. Okay, Harvey, I think the investigators can handle that without your help. Mike?
Yeah, this kind of stuff, and I'm nothing against Harvey Levin. He means well, but he is trying to stay relevant. But it'd be much better if he had just received it, called up the local FBI office immediately, and said, "Look, guys, please come over to the office at TMZ. I want to show you what we've got. I won't touch it. I won't forward it to you. It's right here in my inbox. I just opened it up. Please come over," and left it at that. The less said sometimes, the better, because you don't want people jumping onto that thinking, "Oh my God, how come the police can't solve this? The kidnapper, he gave us his name." No. It should be on the QT, down low.
100%. Phil, your thoughts?
My thoughts, Billy, all of this noise, as I said yesterday, kind of peripheral. Investigators stay in their lane. They'll drown out that noise by working and continuing to move forward with this investigation. There's a couple of points I wanted to make about that video. One is when he walks up, now he's wearing a ski mask. He's pretty well disguised, but he seems to like turn his head up and then he kind of sneaks up on the camera to put his hand in front of it. Why would someone do that? Now, what that tells me is maybe just out of consciousness, even though he has the ski mask on, he wants to block his identity. It's kind of like a subliminal thing. And then he tries to block it out with those vegetation that he grabs from the yard and stuff. And it just seems like maybe it's a kind of a thought that popped into his mind at that moment. I think that this person reconned the location and knew that that camera was there. And I think that they knew that they were going to disable the camera at some point. As I said yesterday on the podcast, I thought when he was bending down that he was going to take a rock and smash the camera. However, he tried to block it with the vegetation that he grabbed. Now, if you were going to go up, walking up, and you were prepared, and you didn't want to have any images recovered from this camera, maybe a spray paint or some type of a covering or piece of tape or something. But I don't think that they thought that far ahead because of the ski mask. Now, maybe, like I said, it was just an instinct. I guess that's the right word, an instinct. Let me cover up this camera that's taking video of me, even though I have a mask on. The second thing I wanted to point out, and we talked about this yesterday, the way that he's carrying that gun, it's just very odd. It's an automatic handgun, semi-automatic handgun, and it's in a holster that appears to be designed for a revolver. Right there, you see it. And I explained what I think the reason is that when I used to carry my gun on my hip and I was in uniform and I was sitting in a car for 8 hours a day, in and out, we would sometimes move the gun to the front of a lap. Obviously, quick access if you needed to get to it while you were seated in the car, but also it's a comfortability thing. It's not pressing against the door, let's say, or the center console. Perhaps, I don't know this for certain, maybe this guy is some kind of a cowboy gunslinger in his mind, and that's why he had the gun in that position. But perhaps it's because of the fact that I just stated, only because I'm familiar with that from wearing a gun myself for many years when I was in uniform as a police officer.
It could be. I mean, but I've never seen anyone actually walking and carry a gun that way.
Yeah,
I've seen cops do that in a car because you're right. It hits the seat and it sticks into your side. So you might move it so as to be seated a little more comfortably. After all, when you're a policeman on patrol or an anti-crime, your office is your car, and you're in that car sometimes 8 hours a day, and you have to get comfortable. I always remember every winter from being in the car for 7 or 8 hours straight. I always get sinus infections from breathing the disgusting heat for 8 hours a day. And those were some of the things that could happen to you when you're on patrol. Anyway, very possible. But one of the things, Phil, I think that this gives us folks from an investigative standpoint is that now we have an idea of who this guy is. And it's strange that he's by himself, but we don't get to see the car that he came up there in, right? Someone is in that car, right? And then when he disabled this camera, is that when the cavalry follows into that front door area and goes in, and we can't see them because the camera has now been disabled? He didn't walk there. There's no way he walked there. So that's some of the questions I have too. And does the FBI have additional Ring camera video from other households with the vehicle? Because now they have an exact timestamp, don't they? Mm-hmm. They have an exact.
There was also that camera removed from the roof, which looked like also a Nest camera. Now, whether or not it was active, I guess, is the question. But perhaps there's video recovered from that, and they're just not releasing it at this point.
I think the FBI has a lot more that they haven't released that we don't know about. And the FBI is notorious for keeping things close to the vest. And I think that's really great. But sometimes they do it and and I always point back to the Boston Marathon bombings when they had video from people's personal cameras and that identified the bombers, the Tsarnaev brothers, identified them. And the police commissioner, the chief of the Boston Police Department, I still remember his name because I've told this story so many times. His name was Ed Davis. And Ed Davis wanted the video released and the stills released to the media, and the FBI overruled them. They even went as far as going to a heavy-duty politician from the Department of Justice to order him not to do that. And as a result, and I can't see direct correlation, a campus police officer was murdered by the Tsarnaev brothers. And perhaps if the photographs of them were put out there a day or two earlier, the public would have known who they were. They would have saw their photos out there, and they may have hightailed it out of the Boston area. As it was, they killed a cop from a university, and then they got into a huge shootout where they were throwing improvised explosive devices at the Watertown police. So all of those things could have been averted if they would have put this picture out. So I believe the FBI has more photographic evidence, but for whatever reason, they may be holding it back right now because there's not one person. If this is a kidnapping team, which undoubtedly I don't believe it's one person. I've heard other people discuss that, but I think there's a whole team behind this. Mike.
Yeah, I believe, and I want to believe, and I think I have faith in the FBI that they, although they may be very, secretive about their information, anally retentive, you might say, but the fact is that they have such technological ability. I believe they probably know at this point, they know exactly what time that person approached that house, probably within 30 seconds or a minute of getting out of a vehicle on that property. So there's video somewhere along the line of a van or something like that going into that property. And then later on, there was talk of that van at a gas station. So they could put the two together, what direction it came from, what direction it was going. If there was video of that van in the gas station, did somebody just run out and get a couple of coffees, or did somebody put gas in that car and continue on? You may be able to see inside the front of that van, depending on how that camera is located, to see maybe inside the front windshield of that van. So this is important, and people don't realize how important it really is. They may not have a lot DNA material and fingerprints, but they have a lot of other material, and so they're working on it right now. So I don't think people should lose faith in this investigation at this point whatsoever.
There is no doubt in my mind this case is going to be solved. Whether it's going to be solved just by arrest or also arrest and the recovery of Nancy Guthrie alive, which is what we all hope and pray for, I cannot predict that. But I will tell you, there is going to be an arrest in this case. From the chat, Lou Lemoracco, many leads still pouring in that need to be vetted, like last night's. Plenty of videos still not released, Lou. You're preaching to the choir, as we say. We believe that also. And what is we don't know as to why the FBI is holding back, and they may have a very good reason to hold back. And again, we don't know that they have more video, more pictures. We're just surmising there's been lots more cameras. Also, marrying and connecting the dots in the investigation. License plate readers. What do you got with cars cruising around at about that time? What do you have on ring cameras? A very specific time right now. There's got to be some cars going into that development there that they must have video of. And of course, the reported white van that was driving around reportedly with the lights off, that's quite suspicious. Casual Observer 26 from the chat. This group who watch Police Off the Cuff is usually some of the best, in my humble opinion, in relation to other sites. If you want to see some real, go read comments on JLR investigates there. Your insult applies best. I don't like to put down any other podcasts unless they do something so outrageous that I can't help it. But it's just like we choose not to criticize the police work, but there was some things to criticize in this case, like the crime scene not being protected after, I think it was released after the first or second day. And that, to me, was a huge mistake. So, Phil, I'd like you to ask you a question. Like,
sure,
let's marry the dots. Let's connect the dots we have this video now. We have a timestamp. Let's talk about some of the other things, like the potential vehicles that were in this area. The tips, undoubtedly, the tips log is, filling up fast, and they're going out and checking every single tip. Your thoughts?
I'd venture to say that based on that video being released yesterday, probably thousands of tips came in. Let's talk about the fact that this person is on video by himself. He didn't operate this whole kidnapping by himself. I'm strongly in the belief that there's a vehicle and other people involved in this kidnapping and abduction. So with that said, this vehicle that we're talking about, the white van, lights off around that time, they're looking for video surveillance of it. That's probably a very good lead that I would think. I mean, let's face it. He didn't walk up there by himself, or he had to travel with a vehicle, and they didn't remove Nancy Guthrie without having a vehicle of some sort, whether it be this white van or another vehicle of some sort. So those are the things that I think the technology is going to provide information on. They've already been to that gas station that was spoken about. The other thing I'm thinking about is this. They were able to recover this specific video from Nancy Guthrie's house regarding the perp at the front door. And I'm going to call him a perp or a suspect. I'm not going to call him a person of interest. He's the guy. They would never have released this if it wasn't directly related to the disappearance and kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie. He's the perp. There's no question about that in my mind. Suspect, call him what you want. That's what he is in my mind. But with that said, there are other areas of the servers that they can search for that time frame. There's got to be other Nest cameras in that area. There's got to be other Ring cameras in that area. Now, from the one that we see from Nancy Guthrie's house, they talk about how a lot of the houses are set back and it's very dark and you can't see. You could see all the way to the mailbox. So that tells me that there are other cameras in the area. Perhaps maybe didn't go off because of the movement, maybe just a vehicle driving by, but it may be on those servers. So working with Google, working with Ring, I'm sure the FBI, they're not waiting to hear it from Detective Phil Grimaldi, retired NYPD. They're probably already on that. And I think there's a lot of information that is not being made public. I think that I saw an FBI agent who retired also saying that he doesn't think that the video came out just yesterday and they released it right away. He believes that they studied it, and I'm okay with that. If they had it for several days, I'm not okay with that. We know from the Boston Marathon bombing, the delay in releasing a video perhaps was related to that horrible shootout and the killing of that college campus police officer. So with that said, time is of the essence. They get something. They got to examine it. I get it. You're not going to immediately release it. You look at it quick. Perhaps you have some technical people look at it, but then you got to get it out there. You get some images and you get it out there.
Absolutely. Folks, this is a Police Off the Cuff. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button, make lots of comments, like us, share us with your friends and your family. That helps our algorithm and helps our show to grow. If you want to contribute financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. And we also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels, and you can become a member of the Police Off the Cuff family by joining our YouTube channel. This is a really the video where you could see the gun in between his legs, and it does look like a semi-automatic in a holster for a revolver, which is sort of strange.
Were released by the FBI, obtained from a Nest camera of an armed person wearing a mask and gloves outside Nancy Guthrie's home. Last night, officials detaining a man in connection with the case, but then releasing him, according to the New York Times. Pima County Sheriff's Office saying they questioned someone after a traffic stop and searched a house in nearby Rio Rico. This man, Carlos Palazuelos, saying he was stopped while working his delivery job.
They put me in the cop car. I gotta wait.
And then let go hours later.
I hope they get the suspect, because I'm not it.
Saying in another interview that it's possible he delivered packages to Nancy Guthrie's address, but he didn't know her. The sheriff's office not commenting, saying only that investigators completed their search of a property and the investigation is ongoing. The agonizing search entering its 11th day, with officials now hoping for leads from that newly released footage, which shows the subject tampering with Nancy's doorbell camera, at one point covering it with plants from her yard. Savannah reposting the video on Instagram, writing, "Someone out there recognizes this person. We believe she is still out there. Bring her home." While none of the images clearly show the person's face, in some you can see what appears to be facial hair around the person's mouth, and in these, distinctively shaped eyebrows showing through the eye holes of the mask. A handgun can be seen here in a waist holster. The person also wearing gloves and carrying a backpack. Until now, investigators had not been able to retrieve any footage from Nancy's home.
Between the data getting to the server and the camera, there's stops in between, and there's going to be pieces of that data possibly that could be recovered.
FBI Director Kash Patel saying last night the agency had to work with private companies to get the footage.
We were able to execute lawful searches and go to these private sector companies and expedite results, and then go into their systems and actually excavate material that people would think would normally be deleted and no one would look for.
Patel also saying authorities were looking at persons of interest in the Tucson area.
And I do believe we are looking at people who, as we say, are persons of interest.
And since those terrifying images were released, the FBI does say they've seen many more tips from the public coming in, but authorities still have not identified a suspect, and the sheriff's department has not said why it is they detained that man last night and whether they had reason to believe that he was the same person we've now all seen in those images. Craig.
All right, Liz Kreutz-Forst there in Arizona. Liz, thank you. Joining us now, NBC's law and intelligence correspondent, Tom Winter, and Brianna Fox, a former FBI special agent and professor of criminology at the University of South Florida. Good morning to both of you. Tom, let's start with the subject who's detained overnight, questioned, and released. What more do we know about that, and where does the investigation stand?
I don't think we need this guy to tell us. What I think is they got a tip. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this guy was probably delivering in the Tucson area, in Nancy Guthrie's area, and someone thought he perhaps looked like the video, and they dropped a dime on him. That's how things work. For those in the chat that have a problem with that, that's how police works, And you do what's called a stop, question, and frisk, and you interview the person, and if they're not the person, you let them go. But police, if they didn't have those powers, they wouldn't be able to get to the bottom of an investigation like this. Since, Mike, you're the lawyer here, why don't you explain that?
Yeah, this is how it goes. If you have a description of a possible perpetrator, the police can figure out gender, maybe the height, maybe the weight, maybe the skin tone, facial hair. As Phil's pointing all these things out, and I'm glad he looks like he's right-handed. I'm a lefty. That guy's a right-handed person. You've got all this information, and you put it out there. Who's got those characteristics and knows the area and maybe driving a van? Well, this guy turns out to be a package delivery person. Somebody called up and the police went out there. If the police didn't go out there and grab this guy and interview him, that would be ridiculous. You have to follow up on all of the leads you get. And this was a credible lead because he's been in that area many times. Delivering packages. Why wouldn't you question him? Nobody gave him the third degree treatment like you see in the old time movies. No, they held him for a while. They asked questions. They want to make sure that they could verify his whereabouts at the time and had somebody provide an alibi for him. That's perfectly fine. This is the way things work. They had reasonable suspicion that he may have been the perpetrator, and they investigated it. They released him. They did it right. That's the way it goes.
And Mike, the other thing is I've heard a lot of even broadcast stations say, "Oh, they searched the house without a warrant," and they don't understand the law. You can search a house without a search warrant with exigent circumstances in an emergency situation where if you're worried whether Nancy Guthrie is still alive. So if you have pertinent information, you can't wait 3, 4, 5, 6 hours to get a judge to sign a search warrant. So you hit the house right away under the emergency exception to a search warrant. And if it's not the place, you dust off the house and you leave. And then, you apologize to the people that live there. But that is the law. and the police are following the law. Phil, seems like you want to say something.
Yeah, I mean, the person that said that, how would they feel if that was their mother that was missing all these days and they want to wait several hours to try and get a search warrant? No. The emergency exception rule was utilized here. I have no problem with that. I don't think they broke any laws or anything like that. And I think that, we have to use common sense here. And this is the way police works. They're following all the necessary steps. I mean, when you look at that individual and you look at the video, he checked off a lot of boxes. He had facial hair. He was about the size and stature of the person that's in that video. And he had a vehicle that delivering packages in the area. So checking off all those boxes, you want law enforcement to say, you know what, this is baloney. We're not going to look at it. No, of course you have to stop that person, question that person, you detain them when you're satisfied. And the investigators were satisfied that he wasn't responsible for the actions that took place with regard to Nancy Guthrie. They released him. And then, like you said, they dusted off everything and they moved on. And I don't think he was complaining. He even said, I'm not the guy, but I hope they get the guy. So listen, if you have to maybe upset some people, or maybe you're not going to get a Christmas card next year from somebody, I'm okay with that, because what's the goal here? The goal here is that we have an 84-year-old woman that's missing 10 days now, and possibly with all types of health issues, kidnapped. She may not even be alive at this point, but we need to do what we have to do. One quick thought. There's somebody in the chat put down, this is Phoenix 8 Rising, nitrile gloves over ski gloves. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like there are gloves, and then there looks like a nitrile glove over the glove of whatever's on the person's hand. That tells me that this person would have trouble manipulating a firearm, because it looks like there's very, very thick gloves under those nitrile gloves. I don't know if that means much, but it just gives us an idea of what this person was preparing for.
Absolutely. Lou Morocco from the chat. Cannon, in your opinion, will the immediate family have to uproot and from their respected cities, and will Savannah quit to the Today Show? No and no. I think they will go about their life. They will not move from the area. Hopefully, when they solve this case, and I really believe they will solve this case, they will get some closure, and they will. The family's got to be going through hell right now. Just, you can't even imagine. Just think, if your own mother was kidnapped, she's gone 10 going on 11 days. It's just absolutely horrific. And look, we can't speed up the investigation. I'm sure they're working 24/7. They're using every piece of science that they have, everything they can do to solve this case. But right now, it's moving a little bit slow. But we were also hopeful yesterday when that video was released, and then they had a person of interest stopping. I was all ready to say, oh, this case is over. That's all she wrote. But that wasn't the case. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, regarding the Guthrie family, I'm not sure if they're native to that area or what, but they might find solace after this case is over with their friends and relatives living there. Some people might say, no, that my peace has been destroyed and I want to move on. But and it's going to be tough to stay. But that's that decision that you got to make. What do you consider your home? Where do you feel most comfortable with? And Lou, great question. I would tend to think that if they are native to that area, they'll probably stay there. If they've got great relatives there and friends in that development, because this daughter only lives just a few blocks away, that they'll stay there. But it's difficult, because we've seen this. All three of us have seen this. When people have something terrible happen in their lives, their apartment has been burglarized, their home has been burglarized. That destroys, your sense of peace and serenity. And people move a lot. I've seen that a lot, where people will move after their apartment has been burglarized when something happens. So in that situation, moving would be even an understandable and natural consequence of this, no matter how this turns out, happy or sad.
From the chat, at Laura 307, is it possible that Nancy was tired of funding their lifestyle, so they decided to kill her for the life insurance and make it look like a kidnapping? The ransom money would have been a bonus. Laura, we don't know the backstory to this. There could be a twist to this that will surprise all of us. But right now, something like, and that's your thoughts, that's fine. But right now, without evidence, all these other things are just conjecture. And we don't know. We don't know. And the big thing is that we don't know where is Nancy Guthrie. And we don't know if this individual who went up to that house armed with a gun, with a mask on and gloves, and destroyed the camera, is he one of the kidnappers? Or is he an opportunist? Phil?
Well, this is definitely a suspect in my mind. I said that earlier, and I feel that you're watching videos of FBI agents and investigators doing a lot of legwork. I'm very confident that they're further down the line than we know. There's more information that they have that they're not telling us. At this point, I think there needs to be a press conference. The messaging was terrible in the beginning. However, today, they need to come out and say, this is where we are with regard to the latest video. Maybe not take so many questions, maybe 2 or 3, 4, 5, whatever, take a handful of questions and end the press conference. This will stem conspiracy theories. Let the general public know this is where we are with the investigation. This is what we're going to be doing, something of that nature, but they need to message today. That's very important, because that will stop a lot of the conspiracy theories and all of the people going into the weeds, as we say. Message today. That's my message to law enforcement.
Absolutely. Lula Morocco, thank you for the $10 super sticker. And as per your comments, I have already commented on it, but thank you so much for your $10 super sticker. This is from the National Review. Let me just play a little bit of this.
To this case after a traffic stop, and just hours earlier, the FBI released haunting new surveillance video. The footage chilling, and still this morning, Nancy is nowhere to be found. Joining us right now with the latest developments in this investigation, former FBI special agent in charge and head of the Chicago PD, Jody Weiss. I want to get right into it, Jody. We want to start with this latest person that was taken into custody after a traffic stop. It went further than that, though. They also searched his house and another car. What were your thoughts about this? When you heard they had detained someone during a traffic stop, does that mean they were surveilling someone and then just decided to take them into custody?
Well, Jan, I think they were waiting for a search warrant. They wanted to have the papers so they could go in and then search his house and then search his car. So it had to be timed properly. I'm sure they had eyes on him, but this was waiting for the paper to go so they could actually execute a search warrant, a court-ordered search warrant.
We know he was a delivery driver, but we also know he was released and he talked to the media. You listened to the conversation that he had with the media earlier this morning. What was your thoughts?
He seemed very forthcoming. He basically said, yeah, they thought I matched the description. They thought it was my eyes. He goes, I gave the guys my phone. I think his mother was very cooperative. So he was very forthcoming, and hopefully we'll can wash him out right away when they verify the data on his phone.
Yeah, and you say we're going to see a lot more of these kinds of arrests perhaps happening in the coming days, perhaps?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of leads coming in from that video, and people are going to respond to those, and they're going to go out and check them out. So we're going to have a lot of incidents go out like this. We check the individual. It turns out it's not the person. But let's hope that based upon this new video release, we get some leads that actually lead to the recovery and safe return of Nancy Guthrie.
Yeah, and we also know they're doing a little bit more than just, oh, you kind of look like this person that was on this video. Because you just mentioned that's what he told, the media, that he looked like the person that might have been on camera there. Speaking of which, the Guthrie family says they do not recognize who this individual is. Someone does, though. But you said what stood out to you was that this person acted alone. Why did that stand out to you? And what else about this video can give investigators clues?
The reason it stood out to me, Jen, they were going after, or he was going after, an adult woman, 84 years old, frail physical condition. So that's not a 50-year-old child that you could go in, snatch, pick up, and get out. So I thought it was interesting going there by himself. But this video showed us so much. First off, this guy was a bumbler. He was not a sophisticated operator. He had no plan for the camera, none whatsoever. He's wearing a pistol in a manner I have never seen after 30 years of being around firearms, anybody wear a firearm like that. So I don't know what was going on. But from a clue perspective, look what he gave us. He gave us basically his height. He gave us his gait, how he walked. He's got eyes now. And you think, well, what's that going to do? Well, now they can get other video. And with AI, you can get some very accurate way to compare a video to there as compared to have to a video at a Circle K. But best of all, leads are going to be pouring in, because if you know me, I may have a mask on, but if you know me, you're going to be able to say, hey, that's Jody Weiss. I can tell just from his eyes, his build, how he walks. So they're going to get a lot of leads from this.
Plus, the video is pretty clear. You can see what he's wearing, and you said the backpack will be pivotal in this case. Why is that?
Well, I say that only because it's a known. Now they have something to compare with other systems. The FBI is very good about having massive databases of everything. So they can start looking and find out, okay, it's this type of backpack. Where was it purchased? Is it sold locally at a particular store in Tucson? With AI, they can go through massive amounts of video now and compare and see if somebody matches that may have bought that backpack. So again, it's another clue. It's kind of like the shoes with O.J. Simpson case. They were able to be compared based upon a massive database maintained by authorities.
Jody, this footage was only recovered after a deep dive into back-end systems because there was no cloud storage. How unusual was it to recover this video?
Jan, that was remarkable work. They went out and got search warrants. They cooperated with Google. Everybody was working together. They were able to recover some of the information and data that was on the camera. And from what I've heard lately, this guy breaking the camera may have caused all this, because from what I understand on these Nest cameras, once it breaks, it freezes. So it's not overwriting itself, because Nancy Guthrie didn't have a subscription. So I thought it was just remarkable to be able to recover with this level of clarity, this video, because this could be a huge development. It is a huge development in this case.
The fact that we've not seen any proof of life and the fact that those deadlines have now passed, how does that change investigative priorities?
They really don't. The number one priority is to try to save human life. So they're going to be working really hard. Now more leads are going to be coming in. So I think they're just going to keep working hard and try to find her and follow the evidence as it leads them.
Very quickly, a lot of folks at home might be watching this and going, okay, if you're ever in a situation like this, you're in your house at night, you see something on your doorbell camera, what do you do? Do you try and hide? Do you grab a weapon? What should you do?
I'd encourage everybody to have a plan before that ever happens. You know, if nothing else, have a safe room that you can get into. Keep your old phone. Don't turn it in, because even if it's an old phone, you can always call 911. So kind of have a ready room. Could be a back bedroom, wherever you could get, where you might have a flashlight, you have a firearm, you have a phone. Call 911, let them know what's going on, because then there's a recording, and let the intruder know what you're going to do if he enters your bedroom. But have a plan in place. You don't want to try to work this out as somebody's breaking into your house.
So you should yell to the intruder, I'm calling 911, I have a gun. You should say that right off the top to the intruder.
Exactly. Again, with 911, it's a recording. So if you have to use deadly force, you will know they can support your argument that this individual had the ability to hurt you, the opportunity, and the motive. And you've got a recording right there with law enforcement. So definitely call the police.
You know, it's funny. Let them hear that one sound that everyone on this earth understands. That is the sound of a slide going back on a semi-automatic pistol. When they hear that, I guarantee they will be running for the hills, you know.
Unfortunately, they're not going to hear that in my house because I'm locked and loaded. So
there's no, but Phil, you can still get dramatic. Let them hear it. Then you don't, because once they hear it, they're not going to stay there. They're gonna run for the hills. So many questions. I thought he was pretty good. This former FBI, and again, like he said, he never saw anyone on Earth carry a firearm that way. And Phil, you explained it away a little bit, but I think more likely he's just a dope. You know, but I don't think he was alone. I really don't. That's where I disagree. And again, there's a million people this, and a million people are going to have a different take on what actually occurred. And, you know, there's people, I've heard people, talking heads on TV say, I don't even think this is a kidnapping. There's people that are denying that a kidnapping ever occurred, that this was some other crime. And the other crime is the even worse thing to think of than this being an actual a kidnapping. So, you know, some of the things also that the FBI must be working on now, the home intruders may have left DNA. And when we know about investigative genetic genealogy and the new technology it is and how amazing it is, it takes time, though. They can't just do it immediately. They could be building a family tree as we speak right now. So I think we all have to realize the FBI is on the right track. investigation takes time, equal part art and science, and they are working their tails off. And so are the Pima County Police, the local police. They are working in tandem with the FBI. It's just the FBI more or less gets the credit because they have all the sophisticated technological advances and all the toys at their disposal, and they're helping the local sheriff's office here. I'm going to let you guys go. We're going to give our final thoughts. Phil, since you raised your hand, you must have went to Catholic school. I'm going to pick on you.
I did.
I'm going to choose you first. Phil, your final thoughts.
Well, before I give my final thoughts, I had a question, and I'm going to pose it to you and to Mike. In my opinion, I think the FBI knows, and I think they can concretely say that there's more than one person involved. What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I absolutely think there's more than one person involved. I think it's a team,
Okay.
And
Mike?
especially if this is connected to the kidnapping, then there has to be more than one person.
Yes.
Same here. I'm guessing at least 2, maybe 3, but this guy isn't just somebody who happened to walk around and happen to walk up to the Guthrie house, and coincidentally, that's where a kidnapping took place. No, this is the guy. This is one of the guys.
Okay. With that said, I talked earlier about there's a need for a press conference or informational press conference. Maybe we don't have to take questions. Things like that can be said. We believe that this individual is responsible for the kidnapping, and we believe there are other individuals, something of that nature. The reward, I spoke about that. Get the reward where the family says they make the parameters of how the reward will be collected. The recovery of Nancy Guthrie. I think that those 2 things are something that should be done sooner rather than later. Thoughts and prayers, as we said when we closed every one of these podcasts, for the safe return of Nancy Guthrie.
100%. Mike, your final thoughts.
I agree with Phil. You've got to have a press conference. Let the public know that, okay, we didn't get the right guy last night, but we're still working. We have a lot more information. Second, get that reward up to $1 million. Turn this guy on that video into somebody's personal lottery ticket forever, and make him hunted down by every member of that public, and have a color view, picture of it. Like Phil said earlier, that helps really bring out people's features and everything else.
100%. And we've all wondered why the reward, and not the ransom, a reward to get witnesses or people that may recognize this person from the video to come forth. And perhaps $50,000 isn't enough. And the addendum to a reward is always for the arrest and conviction of the person. So law enforcement always has an out, whether or not they pay it or not. And I don't think that's sort of a little bit of dirty pool, because if your information results in the arrest, I think that should be good enough. You don't have anything to do with the prosecution, But so I think you're right, they need to absolutely raise the reward money. It's at this point, it's only $50,000. I don't know if they're being told not to put up money, but I think that will get more people talking. And the tips, if you're listening to this show, tips keep coming in. If you know something, if you see something, say something. If you know something, call in the tips log. Folks, we're going to stay on this case as long as it is still active. And I think it's a fascinating case. I would love to work this case.
Oh, me too.
I would love to be on it. And so would Phil, and so would Mike. It's so interesting, and it's so worthwhile too. The cause to get this 84-year-old woman returned to her family and get the bad guys and put the bad guys in prison. So, folks, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. On behalf of myself, Professor Mike Geary, and retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi, thank you so much. And thank you all the new people I see in the chat. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll be back on as soon as we get some new information. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
Stay safe, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.